Welcome to the chapter of output and costs. In this chapter, we shall learn how firms and businesses decide between its output and costs, both in the short run as well as in the long run. I personally like this chapter very much, and not just because I'm teaching it, but mainly because this chapter teaches us many important aspects that can prove to be worthwhile in our everyday life and businesses. So without further delay, let's begin. We know that it is the best interest of a firm to maximize its profits, and in order to do that, it needs to decide on the product and the quantity and how much to charge for that product. And these decisions are based on two time frames. One, the short-run time frame, and two, the long-run time frame. Let's begin with the short-run time frame first. We know that in the short run, most of the factors of production, that is land, capital, and entrepreneurship, are fixed. And only labor is variable. This is because most of the firm's fixed resources, which is also known as firm's plant, are its technology, buildings, and capital. And these cannot be changed or altered in the short run just like that. So they are fixed. However, it is the labor that a firm can add or reduce in any time frame, and therefore if a firm wishes to increase its output in the short run, then it has the option to increase its labors to increase its output. Note this, short-run decisions can be easily altered. Therefore, the firm can increase or decrease output in the short run just by increasing or decreasing labors it hires. Now, the long run. In the long run, all resources can be varied. That is, in the long run, the firm can change all its factors of production. And to increase output in the long run, a firm can change its fixed resources like technology, buildings, and capital, and also has the option to increase or decrease the quantity of labor it hires. However, please note, long-run decisions are not easily reversed. So, once a decision is made, the firm must live with it for some time. So, if a firm decides to buy a fixed resource, it incurs a sunk cost, a cost that is irrecoverable. However, this sunk cost is irrelevant to firm's decisions and makes no difference in its decision making. So, the only cost that influence its decisions are the short-run cost of changing its labor inputs and the long-run cost of changing its fixed resources. We're going to study costs both in the short run as well as in the long run. But for now, in this video, we're going to begin with the short run and describe the technology constraints the firm faces. Well, we already know that in order to increase output in the short run, a firm must increase the quantity of labor it employs. And we describe the relationship between output and the quantity of labor by using these three related concepts. 1. Total product, in short known as TP. 2. Marginal product, in short known as MP. And 3. Average product, in short AP. These product concepts can be illustrated either by product schedules or by product curves. We will look at first into the product schedules. So this is a product schedule of a knitting firm that produces jumpers. I have intentionally taken this example straight from your book so that when you read your book, you find relevance. Now, the product schedule shows us total product, which is the maximum output all the labors can produce. Then it shows marginal product, which is the increase in output from just one extra unit of labor. And also it shows average product, which is simply the average product or output per labor. And in the exam, we might ask you to calculate all this. Now, let's look at the product schedule for an example and try and understand how to do the calculations. It's pretty simple actually. As you can see, the first column of the product schedule tells you the number of laborers this company hired, and the second column shows us the total product or the output the labor can produce. For example, we can see one labor can produce 4 jumpers and the second labor can produce 10 and so on. So from the very first look, we can tell as we increase the number of laborers, we can increase the output of the firm, right? But wait, today we learn about marginal product, and this will teach you something new. You see, the marginal product tells us how much total product increases when employment or labor increases by 1 unit. So basically, that is how much jumper one additional labor can produce. And this is given by the formula as change in the total product divided by the change in the quantity of labor. So now, if you look at column number 3, you should be able to see the marginal product of this firm. And as you can see, the marginal product of this firm initially increases, but then it falls. Can you guess this why? Okay, for now we will come back to this later, but now first we must learn how to calculate marginal cost. The formula is given to you on this slide. All you need to do is simply plug in the values and check if your answer matches with those on the slide. So, for example, the first marginal product we get by simply dividing the total product, that is 4 minus 0 divided by the change in the labor, which is 1 minus 0. And you should get your first marginal product, and the rest you should be able to figure it out. Pretty simple. Similarly, you should be able to calculate the average product too. The formula is once again given to you, and all you need to do is plug and find your answers shown in the column number 4 of the schedule, which is simply total product divided by the quantity of the labors. And once again, you can see the average product initially increases, but then it also starts falling. And so let's see what this is trying to show us. So the marginal product can be measured by the slope of the total product curve. Remember, the slope of a curve is the change in the value of the variable measured on the y-axis, which is basically the output of the jumpers here, and divided by the change in the variable measured on the x-axis, which is labor input here. So, as we can see here, a 1 unit increase in labor input, that is, from 2 to 3 workers, increases output from 10 to 13 jumpers. And this is exactly like the product schedule that you have seen in the previous slide a minute ago. And the shape of almost all the product curves represents 2 very important features. 1, increasing marginal returns initially, and 2, diminishing marginal returns eventually. So, what is increasing marginal returns? Well, increasing marginal returns occurs when the marginal product of one additional worker exceeds the marginal product of the previous worker. So for example, in our case, the first worker was just making 4 jumpers, right? And think it like this. This one worker has to learn all the production process of producing a jumper. Like, the worker has to know how to run the kneading machine, has to know how to do the dyeing or the coloring process, and then do the packaging by himself. But then, when we put the second worker in this firm, then both the workers can specialize in different aspects of the production process. Say, for example, worker 1 specializing in the kneading and coloring section, where worker 2 specializing in the packaging section. And as a result, 2 workers produce more than twice as much as 1. And the marginal product of the second worker is therefore greater than the marginal product of the first worker. And so we can say the marginal returns are increasing. Next, we have diminishing marginal returns. This occurs when marginal product of an additional worker is less than the marginal product of the previous worker. To simply put, when more workers are added and more workers are using the same machinery in the same plant, then there is actually less and less for the additional worker to do that is productive. If we see in our case here, when we add the third worker is not producing as much jumper as the second worker. The reason is because all the gains from the productivity has exhausted. Or to put more simply, the factory has now enough workers to utilize all its machines or fixed resources fully. And so one can say there are times the third workers has actually nothing much to do and basically just sitting idle. So we can now say adding more and more workers will although increase total output, but marginal output, which is the output per worker, will keep on falling. And from here, we can link this to yet another theory called the law of diminishing returns, which simply states that as a firm uses more of variable input, such as labor, with the same quantity of fixed inputs, such as machineries or capital, then the marginal product of the variable input will eventually diminish. Hope that makes sense. Now, if from the product schedule that we saw in the previous slide, we plot the marginal product and the average product curves, we should exactly see what you can see here on the graph. And from here, we can see a relationship of average product and marginal product. That is, average product is largest when the average product and marginal product are equal. That is, when they intersect with each other in the graph. As a result, marginal product curve cuts the average product at the point of maximum average product. The relationship between the average and marginal product curves is quite interesting, and there is a very good example for you to look at in the book. Hope that gives you a good reason to open the book. Well, at least that's what I'm trying to make you do. Okay, that's it for this lecture video. Now please do the required readings and remember to go through all the contents of this lecture. I will see you in the next lecture video where we will look into short-run costs.